Alright, so here we are in Conquest of Paradise. Played out another full turn from the last video. And we got, right now let's go from last to first in victory points. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. These guys should be at 8. So let's look first at the tan, which is the Tongans. Who are somewhere here. I'm not seeing them. Oh, there they are. Yeah, I can see them. I just can't see them. They have connected up their canoes so that they have a fully connected territory. They also have all their all their villages in place, including in areas which were once brown. Those are now cultivated. And they paid extra, nobody else did this, by tossing their explorer into the lost box. That gave them an extra point to build stuff, intention being to develop some of these territories in their backlands. Next we have the Ryatians, who have connected up their territories, except for their new one, which is, what is this? Hawaii. That's a mythical island. So far there's nothing apparent about mythical islands that gives any bonus, but some of these arts and culture cards give an advantage if you have mythical islands. So now they're in a position where they may be more interested in picking those cards up than anyone else is. And they've also filled up at least their home island. They still have other areas to fill, though. Moving on to the Heathens. They have, I believe, added a new island here. And they're a nice little dense territory. There's advantages to that. It's easier to protect. Nobody's done any fighting yet. And finally, we come to the Samoans, who are in the lead. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 points. And again, all connected, settled islands, which is a nice situation. Having to put boats in sea areas, like we've got here, is kind of an expensive proposition. It's not worth any victory points, and you can't develop the area, so it's kind of a double whammy. But the Tongans don't have a lot of options here, unless they're going to go into Fiji or something. So they pretty much feel like they either have to develop what they've got or go to war. Generally, the game favors not fighting. Although, you can gain a lot by fighting. Once you start the fighting, usually the person you picked on wants revenge, and all kinds of bad things happen. Alright. And the game continues to be peaceful, as we see. We started off with the Tahitians, and they pretty much just expanded further along their way. They did some exploring, but there's only so much. Their territories are looking kind of tight right now, in terms of there's only this left, and then down here there's some unexplored territories. They had to reveal, they did enough exploring, they had to reveal an atoll that's mostly valueless, just to show people, hey, I don't have anything in my back areas, don't pester me. Not sure which way is better. If it would be better to reveal one of these if those are valueless. Then let's see. Okay, but they're still in the lead with 13 points. The next is our Heathens, who really just expanded up here. They've been building up a solid power base that we see. The Tahitians took a pass to build extra. They don't see much value to further exploration at this point, which may mean that they have things worth expanding into, or it just may mean there aren't that many spaces left. Going on to the Tongans, who are in last place down here. No, let's do the Ratians, who are in third place. Grew Hawaii to a somewhat larger size, and also colonized Norfolk Island, which they probably called something else. And then finally we go to the people who were in last and still are in last with 9 victory points. That's our Tongans. And their position doesn't look that bad. They just turned over Hawaii, which is a valuable island. It all depends on what they've got down here. But they are kind of out of it. And they do have some distance. So if, say, Samoa attacks them, they might be in a lot of trouble here. They're also between 2 people. Of course, everybody's between at least 2 people, right? It's just the nature of this game that you're sitting in a risky location no matter what. Which I think is part of the coolness of it. Battles... It's one of those games where you don't want to start a war, because quite often it's the guy who comes into the war last who wins it. Usually a couple of people get into a fight, and then a third or a fourth player jumps into it and eventually ends up with the advantage. Last time I played, there were a couple 2-player wars that worked out very well. Right now, if we saw a war, say, between Tonga and Samoa, that would probably be to the other side's benefits, because they're not in direct conflict yet, and they've got a lot of space to still expand into, it looks like. So after another turn, we see a little bit more and some definite clustering together of the leading players, but a little bit more expansion. Mainly it's development within the territories, though. Still no war, but I think it has to happen now. Let's start off with our buddies over in Tahiti, who are really pretty much at the limit of their expansion if they're not going to go into, say, Fiji or over here to the Gilbert Islands. Which they may do. They still have to prepare for war in either case. Tahiti, actually that's Samoa. Tahiti is almost completely full. Everything else that they have is full, and they only have one area that they could explore, and then these over on the edge. So they're really at the limits without either stretching their exploration and ignoring the fact that Tonga's next to them. So they really do have to build up their army, and then they have to decide what to do with it. They may eventually move that way, but it's unlikely. Okay, so to our next at 14.5 points, because you get half points for those atolls, we got the Hivas, and they haven't really actually increased at all. They just filled out their territory, and they too have filled their territory completely. They still have an area that they haven't discovered. They are the only person who retained their explorer, which is kind of an interesting thing. Maybe a sign that they're more peaceful than everyone else. They have a lot of open territory down here that they can expand into if there's something valuable there, as well as they're not too far from that other far end of the map, which might be a very safe place to be. And then at 14 points, we have our friends in Raiatea. Kind of crappy territories in the middle, but a little bit of value out here, and they still have a couple spaces that maybe are worth something. Oh, one more onto the heathens. They bought a card. In this case, I can show you what it is. It counts as a victory point. They didn't show this to anyone else. They're just showing it to you because you're their friend. And it has a military effect as well if it's turned up during battle, which is kind of cool. Some of these cards have a play effect as well as producing victory points. That victory point's not recorded until they turn that card face up, though. So it's kind of like Settlers of Catan in terms of that, except that those victory point cards sometimes have additional effects, which I really like. And then finally to our laggards, the Tongans. Well, obviously still have a lot of space left to grow in, and maybe over here as well. However, it looks like they built military with the thought of, we see everybody around us is pretty much being clustered, especially the Samoans. We're expecting war. If we don't get it from them, maybe we go to Fiji or whatever, but that's their feeling. So, on the first player of the turn, which is the Samoans, they came to something of an agreement with Tonga to attack the Rhaetians. What exactly, how fair that is, whatever. Tonga is kind of like, yeah, you can go ahead. They agreed to split these two islands and then see what happens after that. So we've got the first battle of the game. And we put the little battle marker down. We associate a front and back line. In the case of the Rhaetians, they only have one unit in the front line. The back line can't fight. And in the case of the Samoans, they have all 4 units in the front line. And the way this works out is I roll a die. I got a 6, which over here on the battle says defenders removed. So the defender loses a unit. Goes back into his pile. And now we have a retreat. This has to actually flee flee from Norfolk Island. And we'll pull it back to Rhaetia. It's no longer part of the convoy. And now we have a situation which I really like. This village is going to be destroyed unless the Samoans play and get rid of one of their soldiers to keep it. And now they own Norfolk Island. Now, if they had done this correctly, they would have also moved a fleet in there with it. But I just wanted to show you quickly what a battle was like. That was a pretty minor one. Now we're seeing war starting, and I think the game is shifting to a very different flavor at this point. One other thing, since the island's been captured, it's tilted in a direction to indicate who owns it. That's important if the troops all leave, for example. On the Rhaetian turn, they spread their ships, their canoes out so that they could connect back up to Niue. And they are colonizing Rarotonga. They don't have the troops to fight, so they're pulling back for now, and they're going to see what they can do in later turns. Okay, crappies. I screwed up on that battle, and there should be a native unit left. So there should be a second round of combat there. There's never a free combat because there's a village there. Now, I jumped ahead to the Rhaetian turn. We'll forget about that for now. The second round was also a success, so the effects were exactly the same as we said. There would have been another warrior here. I just wanted to check that out. Okay, and after that little time warp, the Tongans agreed, honored their alliance and captured Niue. They rolled a 4, which was a panic for the defending, and that was just the intrinsic native strength point that comes with the village. They rolled a 4 with that, which is a panic. It had nowhere it could possibly retreat, so they captured it, and then they spent their warrior as well to conquer the territory. Now, in neither case are these newly conquered territories assimilated into the canoe chain, which means that they can only build locally. That's something we've seen before, but right now it means no reinforcement troops. All they'll get is one point to build there, which is enough to build a transport canoe, which is what they need.